Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast 900. And what is it, 928 now? This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. It's a race review weekend. You know what our podcasts do on race review weekends?
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
Yeah, that's what we do. We talk about it. So we're going to talk about the season opening Australian Grand Prix. It was an exciting event. That's what we're going to do. Before doing that, of course, I have to introduce my guest.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Controversy, Paul.
Controversy.
Paul, there was a really exciting race this weekend, and I'm so glad you came on to talk to us about it because Heart of Racing was on the podium at the 12 Hours of Sebring in the GTD class, huh?
That was exciting. Got that in the last lap, too. That was exciting.
Yeah, that Ferrari of Sarah had to box for gas.
The box, and then we had to get by that pesky Corvette.
Yes.
But the Corvettes were playing games, holding us up.
Yes.
And then, because we were trying to get to the GTD Corvette, but in the end, Tom Gamble got the job done on the last lap. So,
he did. Yeah, I watched a majority of that race, and
it was good.
And it was a really good race. And then, so you've got you have the 27 on the podium, and the GTD class. Great job.
That was awesome. Yeah. Now second in the championship by just a smidge. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few points. You're second in the championship. You're behind.
The 57 car.
The AO. Is it AO Racing?
No, the Windward car.
The Windward, the Mercedes, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you like the punt he put on the Hawk?
Yeah. Hey. I knew Bo wasn't going to call that one. He's not going to call that one. If he'd punted him into a spin, it would have been. But it was a little general nudge. I don't have a lot of sympathy for Jack Hawksworth, honestly. Yeah. So it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Good for him. He deserves it.
Yeah.
That was.
They all have their goes at people.
Yeah. You think Sully was a little frosty over that one?
Yeah, probably was. But in the end, they've played that game before themselves. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other good news is the Valkyrie first race stateside. First season for the Valkyrie. Obviously, there's some teething, issues you got in Qatar, but you show up here, 12 hours. You finish in top 10?
Yep.
And this is all data you're harvesting, reliability. I mean, the upside of that, I was hoping maybe you get a little attrition ahead of you, and because the first half of that race it was really chippy out front.
It was, yeah.
And I was hoping maybe a little bit of attrition. You guys get up there, but the good news is that regardless what GTP car they were showing, you could hear the Valkyrie on the microphones. Regardless, they were showing the Porsches, of the captains, and still you could hear the Valkyrie in the background. It was great.
It sounds good, and it was good. It's not, I don't want to beat the sound to death because a car sounding good and not going well, is just a slow car, right?
Yeah, right.
So the sound is amazing to get that car to work, and we did. We got it to work. It was fairly competitive lap times, and we're in a different mindset right now because we're basically going to do a back-to-back 12-hour this week testing. So our mindset was to finish the race. Maybe if it's a year from now, we would have been pushing harder for position and playing the yellows and things like that. But we are basically just trying to stay out of trouble. So by doing that, we still stayed on the lead lap for a very, very long time. And near the end, we just kind of backed off a little bit just to kind of we didn't have anything to win or lose at that point.
Yeah, right.
So we probably could have finished one lap down, and there was a long amount of green, and we stayed. We stayed on it. We stayed with them, and so I think we're really proud of it, and it was a big achievement for us. Sebring could possibly be the hardest race of the year.
Yeah.
It's not the longest, but it's the bumps, the cars take a massive beating.
Yeah.
And so that's why people come to Sebring to do 24-hour tests for Le Mans, because it'll beat the car to death. So I think for us to get through it without any major issues, we're very, very happy, honestly. It's now we're kind of getting there. And Long Beach is coming up, which is a sprint race, and we're not going to be running endurance tests there. So we'll see how that goes. But definitely very, very encouraging.
Yeah, I thought so too. You ran 12 hours. I don't recall the finite details. I was just watching from afar, but I don't recall any major issues with the Valkyrie. The engine seemed to perform. I think at one point I checked, I think you were only 6-8 tenths maybe off the fastest lap of the class.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you put sectors together, we were maybe a second.
Maybe a second
off the fastest, right?
The fastest, yes.
But within a couple of tenths of the mid pack, which is good. And we lost time in the pits for sure.
Driver change is pretty tough.
Driver changes get tough. We've got to work on that. But we also, with that mindset, we're also making sure everything was, we weren't rushing it. Let's put it that way. We were probably a bit over, maybe 5-6 seconds every pit stop, just to make sure everything is good. Because, as I said, this is the beginning of our program, not the end. So.
Yeah. It's the beginning of a program. So even the Penske Porsches, didn't come out of the box and win everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, right? Because all of those, everyone debuted at the same time, technically. Yeah. So everyone having issues, things goes to and fro. Everyone's kind of well sorted with a new kid on the block, so it maybe sticks out a little bit more. But yeah, we're super happy with how it went, and the car's definitely got the potential to be competitive. So just got to keep working at it.
Yeah, that's great. Super excited for it. Watched most of the race. Very excited. So it was good fun. Well, there was another race this weekend, and you happened to get that watch Down Under, the great Southern Land, and all over.
I got back to the room after the 12 hours, started trying to watch it, and I lasted about 3 laps at that point. And then as soon as the yellow came out, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
So luckily I had a nice little 6-7 hour layover delay at the airport due to all the weather coming through Florida. I was easier able to catch up on the race on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, it was eventful to be sure. The changing conditions, right? It starts wet, dries out, gets wet again. Those are always exciting races. Those kind of races have a tendency to equalize the cars and really highlight the drivers. And that's exactly what it did this weekend. Down Under. Friday and Saturday were quite different than Sunday. Of course, it was warm, dry Friday and Saturday. And as we went into now, this is my optimistic, Ferrari fanboy talking, but I was wondering how many teams might be compromising a little bit of their quality setup in anticipation because they all knew it was going to be raining on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Or at least I was telling myself that's the reason that Ferrari seemed to underperform on Saturday. And the good news for me as a Ferrari fan is they completely underperformed on Sunday too. Yay! So happy. So anyway, that's there was that sentiment though of a compromise, and it also Ollie Behrman, he had the worst start of a rookie season I can recall, with 2 crashes in free practice and then a mechanical during qualifying. He didn't get to qualify. Started the pit lane. Oddly, he had no tears. And there was no consolation from Lewis's dad on that, or Stefano. So who knew? Poor Ollie. Pulling himself up by the bootstraps.
All on his own.
Yeah. He consoled himself.
Just moved on, got with the program.
Yeah, it's like, hey, shit happens, As the 4th fastest track on the calendar, the changing conditions made a very eventful race. The notion that McLaren is the fastest car coming out of testing, well, you could somewhat, that's somewhat endorsed by Sunday's performance when Max fell 14 seconds behind Lando mid-race, and I think the rain may have masked some of that advantage that the McLaren really truly might have. If they're 0.3 a lap faster or not, that was the conventional wisdom heading in there. So let's talk about McLaren. We'll start at the sharp end of the grid. You had Lando Norris taking the victory, P1, Oscar Piastri in P9. Starting with Lando. Lando led the race from the start. once Oscar recovered the position that he lost to Max initially, the duo looked set for a 1-2 down under. Lando seems to have the pace in hand, pulled out quite a gap to Max, but then the rain came and Lando and Oscar ran wide, leaving Oscar off the track and Lando fending off a charging Max. The reality is, despite having DRS, Lando had the pace to keep Max at bay, and he went on to secure his 5th win in F1 and open his account on the World Championship. And I thought that was some decent coaching from his race engineer, Paul. Don't overpush it. You've got the pace. Just drive within your limits. Don't blow it. You've got plenty of pace.
Yeah, and obviously the feedback from Norris was he wasn't too panicked either.
Yeah,
right?
He wasn't.
I think they know what they've got right now. So
yeah,
that they don't have to take any wild swings at the strategy or anything like that. Obviously, they dive straight in the pits, and maybe they could have waited another lap, but they've got the pace in hand, so they don't need to push that and make those mistakes. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal job by McLaren. Australia tends to obviously when it's the first race of the year and it's a bit of a unique track, can make the disparity a bit false, I would say. Let's give it a couple of weekends before we say McLaren have 22nd pace on Max Verstappen. But they definitely hit the ball rolling and did a phenomenal job, and it should have been a 1-2 for him, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And we just talked about last week. Does Lando have that? Is he ruthless enough? And he looked awful, damn poised in very difficult situation, very difficult conditions. I would say Lando, even running on wide, held it together, dove in the pits, changed it, and he's just very poised.
Yeah, and he got up under pressure from Max and from Oscar. But didn't make any errors, right? And that's a key.
Yeah,
and that's the mindset that hopefully he'd been working on through the winter, because that's the mindset he needs to win the championship.
Yeah, he looked just stoic as hell. So great run by him. Let's talk about Oscar real quick. Oscar, there for a good portion of the race, to me, he was the quickest driver on track. And at certain times, then he was told to hold station. And then later he was told, I think they were trying to conserve a 1-2, and with the strategy and the inters, I think the team was saying, all right, look, we've got him where we want him, just everybody hold station, let's bring him home, right? But then later he was told he could race Lando. So I don't know. Zach was interviewed by Sky, and they asked him, about papaya rules, and he goes, "Oh, it's actually very simple. It's very easy." Well, it didn't look too easy on Sunday. Despite what Zach has to say about him, I still think those are going to come back to bite him. Oscar drove a great race, but in the end, his off was one reason that I think McLaren. This is just my personal opinion. I know you'll probably disagree, but I think this is a good reason that McLaren needs to stop messing around with papaya rule stuff and focus on getting Lando to the top. Oscar is awesome. I love Oscar. I'm just not quite. I don't know if he's quite there yet to be champion material. And I say that if Oscar can't consistently just beat Lando every race, how's he realistically going to consistently beat Max, right?
Yeah, it's difficult.
It's a tall order. I'm not casting aspersions on Oscar, because I rate him. He's awesome.
Yeah.
But Lando is in the pocket. You can sense it. You can tell it. And I wonder, as fantastic as I think Oscar is, I'd hate to see this lead to a Mercedes 2016 scenario.
Yeah.
You don't want that. And this concept, well, just let them race. I don't know.
The problem is, they just signed a new deal with Oscar.
Deal. Yeah.
And I'm sure part of that is what those rules entail, and when does Oscar have to, cede to Norris on finish position? It's not right now. And we've seen Piastri put in dominant performances, and we've seen Norris make mistakes and not be quite there. So I don't think we can take this one race and say, okay, well, Norris has got his head on his shoulders, Piastri should just follow him. I just don't think.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe you could go to China this weekend and maybe Norris makes a mistake and Oscar dominates. Then what do you do, right?
Right, exactly. So there has to be rules of engagement for sure.
Yeah.
In changeable conditions like that, I think it's probably is best to just say, let's just hold station.
Right.
They obviously had a hand over the rest of the field. There's no point in throwing away just for fighting. When you're on a regular track in the dry, etc. I think they need to exert their performance over each other in qualifying in a clean manner. But I just don't see that coming to fruition right now, and I don't think Oscar would even if they asked him to, he won't. But I don't think it's part of the plan.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. If it was me, I feel like Lando's been there. He's been racing longer. Yeah. He's got himself in the pocket mentally. He's got his racecraft in the pocket. This is the year for him. Yeah. And I would have some deference for that. If I was
and you're right, but Norris can do that. But Norris is in control of that. He needs to make it a non-question.
Yes, agreed.
Right? Agreed. Else he's, if Oscar win on there any other day, then that's fine. But overall, Norris, needs the same attitude and performance he had today, and then it really will be a non-issue. Yeah.
He just needs to put in performances that kind of render the issue irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Exactly.
But great race for McLaren. Hit the ground strong. Great points haul for Lando. Leads the championship. Looked poised. Looked completely calm, like you mentioned. Even his radio communications, I thought, were really calm, succinct. Didn't seem panicked. Oh my gosh, Max is on me. He seemed in control. And maybe they've got pace in hand, and maybe that he's confident of that, and he's got that confidence in the car. But I think he did a great job. Let's talk about Max. Red Bull, Liam Lawson at DNF, Max Verstappen P2. I know lots of people are making light of Liam struggling this weekend and how his performance was really no better than Sergio's, and I get it, folks. I really do, but it's one race, one weekend, and changing conditions were a baptism by fire for most of all the rookies, nearly, save versus Kimi. Liam had the older nose cone. Not sure if that would make any difference in performance or a major difference, but Max had the newer nose cone. You can tell he's really struggling with that car, though, over the weekend. And I think that, in a lot of ways we talk about, Sergio, Liam, Alex, other people that have been his teammates. And, maybe, I don't know, maybe we're looking at it backwards. Maybe that says a lot more about Max than it does Liam, Sergio, or Alex, or anyone else who struggled at Red Bull. It just, Max seems to be able to take that car and make something happen where the other ones struggle with it. But it's one race, very much like you said about Oscar. Yeah.
It's the toughest seat in the house to be the backup to Max, because not only because he's a very talented guy and you're comparing the two, but his unique setup philosophy makes it difficult for other people to adapt to. Talked about that, where Lawson has to be a bit firmer or be confident enough to be able to go his own way on setup, etc.
Yeah.
But it's the first race, as you say. I don't think it's going to be a disaster. It wasn't great. I'm not going to lie.
No.
It was not great.
No.
And surprisingly not great. I did expect more, but
I was too, if I'm honest.
I think we're going to put. Let's bring the jury in after about 3 races and let's see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of people said, see, they should have chose Yuki, and see, they shouldn't have got rid of Sergio, and those kind of things. And I don't know, time will tell. We'll see. I think it's early doors, right?
Yeah, early doors indeed.
Yeah. I think it also says a lot about McLaren poaching Rob Marshall and Peter Perdomo, if I'm honest. And sometimes I wonder if this car isn't incredibly narrow in its scope and how it operates when you consider what Peter and Rob and McLaren have delivered for Oscar and Lando.
Yeah.
where both of those drivers, they're not carbon copies of each other, but both of those drivers can exploit the performance of that car with a well-balanced car over a multitude of track differences. Whereas I wonder if that Red Bull is just so, narrow and focused and sharp that it makes it difficult. So my thoughts wander towards, if Max can basically drive anything, Paul, then would it hurt the team to move the car in a more balanced design, if possible, so that, a Sergio, a Liam could be relatively quick in it or a little more comfortable in it? Surely Max could adapt to that and maximize the performance. Or would moving the car in that direction simply slow the whole car down too much? Are they stuck at this knife edge in order to be competitive is what I'm wondering.
I mean, we can say Max can drive anything, but last half of last year, he was getting beaten.
Yeah.
Because the car wasn't the way you liked it. So there's no way they're going to give up on this philosophy of throwing everything towards biasing Max, right?
Yeah.
And hoping Liam can figure it out. But you don't give up known performance to make it easier to drive for the number 2 driver. It's not in them. They're not going to do it.
No, they're not going to.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But and if you're going for the manufacturer's championship, it might make it easier, but they're just not going to give up on letting Max drive the design and the focus.
Yeah, you're probably right. Talking about Max, it was clear Max didn't have the pace of the McLarens, dropped back 14 or so seconds mid-race, but the rain came again. It equalized the cars, highlighted the drivers, and that's where Max made a run at Lando, but just didn't have the sheer pace in the car to take the win, even though he had DRS. There's some thoughts, and, hindsight, being 2020, some people sitting at home wondering, well, gosh, had they boxed Max earlier and not kept him out that long, wouldn't he have been in the lead of the race then? And he may have, but I don't know, Paul, if I'm convinced, even if he had boxed earlier and came out in the lead, I don't know that they had the pace to keep the Lando behind him, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I don't think so. But, you put Max in front of people.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you count against him, right?
Yeah, right.
I think, with interchangeable conditions, in dry conditions, it wouldn't have made a hill of beans difference. But it could, 20, as you say, hindsight. But still, the McLaren, usually a good car in the dry is a good car in the wet, and good car from track to track, and that's basically what they got in the McLaren. So I don't think Lando was pushing any harder than he needed to do and could control it.
I'll tell you one thing I was interested in when I was watching them cycle through the pit stops, Paul, was how quickly the McLarens could get heat in their tires and not struggle with the wear rates that, like you're seeing Ferrari and other teams struggle with.
Right.
They instantly got heat in those tires, but the tires weren't wearing out, and they didn't have the degradation issues like other teams are. I found that really interesting.
Yeah, it's a dream scenario for a team.
Yeah, isn't it?
You get the tires going, and they last forever. Yeah, that's
right.
That's
I bet you
nice.
would love that in your Aston Martin.
We would love that.
As soon as you pit, you come out, and half a lap, you got optimum heat in the tires, and you're good to go.
And that's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But,
So I found that interesting. Right? Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and it might be a feature of what makes that McLaren so quick. One of many that makes it quick. Let's talk about Mercedes. You had Kimi Antonelli in P4, George Russell in P3. George started fourth, Paul, ran another one of those patented quiet George Russell races, right? He had the pace to stay well ahead of the midfield, but not quite enough to challenge the leaders. He inherited that third place when Oscar spun off. And while there were no heroics from George, I think George had a terrific race in very difficult conditions. Was glad to finally hear Toto heap some praise on George for a change. I thought that was good. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those tidy, error-free races for him. It certainly had pace, looked very competitive, kept the midfield well behind him. Looked solid the whole time. It's hard to find fault other than the car just didn't have the pace to compete at the front.
Yeah, I would say that's it in a nutshell, really. Yeah. I mean, when you're given those cards where the Ferrari all of a sudden disappeared, and you get on the podium. He seemed very happy to be on a podium,
Yeah.
and keeps him in the championship hunt to be able to fight. But obviously, the Mercedes needs some progress in the car. But it hasn't lost any either. It just hasn't.
Had gained.
Yeah, they haven't come up with a magic bullet yet. But
They haven't closed that gap we were talking about.
Yeah.
George's performance a little bit overshadowed, if I'm honest, by the young phenom Kimi Antonelli, and probably for very good reason. The young Italian came from 16th to finish all the way up in P4 in a race where all the other rookies, say versus Ali, crashed out.
Yeah.
He was up against some really strong performers midfield, had some terrific passes. His performance might be a bigger clue as to why the team passed on Carlos Sainz in favor of Kimi. And keep in mind, he did have a spin during the race, which wasn't great, all on his own, but he still made it back up to P4. And sure, there was attrition, no doubt about it. He inherited spots, as many drivers did, but I consider it still a really good run in these conditions. It's a baptism by fire for these rookies, and he did a great job. I'd say, given the track conditions, I think Mercedes has a really good driver lineup, and I'm excited to see what Kimi can do in the next coming races and certainly years. But I thought he really acquitted himself very well.
Yeah, no, he did really well. I mean, but that mistake was a very bad one. I mean, it was a big error. And he was lucky to get away with it. It could easily have been talking about him amongst all the other rookies who threw into the wall. So he was a bit lucky there, but the pace was good. I just saw the Drive to Survive with him on it. I don't know if you saw that. So, boy, I tell you, Toto's a big fan. Big fan. It's like his new puppy or something. It's pretty crazy. It's like, geez, could you just back off, man? It's getting creepy.
I know.
But
they're like, hey, Toto, what do you think of George? George who?
Yeah. Where's Kimi? Where's Kimi? I got him some cake.
Yeah.
I got him some cake.
Poor George.
Yeah, poor George. He's never going to get the love.
He's never going to get the love there.
No, especially now Kimi's there. I mean, obviously Kimi seems to have a massive upside in pace, and you can teach people to not make mistakes. You can't teach them to go faster for the most part.
Yeah.
The reason they picked Kimi is future, right?
Yep.
Such a big upside to this kid. So,
yeah.
And they'll be definitely working on it, and George will be helping him some, but I can see George seeing him as a big threat too. So I don't think he's going to be, burning the midnight oil with Kimi, teaching him everything he knows, quite honestly.
Yeah. I mean, you already got Toto sending Kimi little love notes.
Yeah.
So that's one, so he's already taken the Toto's attention, passion, love, and kindness. So, helping Kimi get his sea legs in Formula One, I doubt George has much interest in.
No, I don't think so. He can say it outwardly, but I don't think he shouldn't either.
Yeah. No,
he's got to try and hold his ground there while he still can.
Yeah. That's why I say George to Aston Martin. I think that'll be a good move. Yeah. Let's see. Really, in the feel-good story of the weekend, really, is Williams. You have Alex Albon at P5, Carlos Sainz, unfortunately, at DNF. What a great story this is so far, just in practice and at the race, to finally see a resurgent pace from Williams. Running seventh for much of the race, the team got the intermediate strategy spot on for Alex. They got it just right with the help of Carlos Sainz. James Vowles said Carlos, once he was back in the pit, he was really helpful to the strategy team and was the guy that said, no, you got to box him. You're never going to make it on the inners.
Yeah.
And they did, and it worked a treat. And so they parlayed that into a very impressive P5 result. Great points, some fantastic driving by Alex, I thought. Just a great result for this team. I hope this turnaround, what a great turnaround for this team. And I'm excited to see if they can't make a serious claim for best of the rest.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was really good. This is what, James's third year now?
Yeah.
So, you learn your lessons, you lick your wounds, you fix things. And now it seems like, obviously bringing Carlos Sainz into the team, there's got to be an influx of cash and push to be competitive. It's not just, we're just trying to figure this whole thing out.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, now we're a proper race team, and we're going to start trying to really search for performance out there, not just with our drivers, but with the car.
Right.
So big push, and yeah, it was great. I mean, he earned that 5th place. It
Yeah, he
wasn't
did.
given to him at all. He was competitive the whole weekend, competitive in qualifying, and drove a great race. So for Williams, yeah, it was intense. I'm sure, but very buoyed for the whole team when they go
Yeah.
back and work for the next race, right?
Yeah, I couldn't be happier for the men and
Yeah.
women of that team. You know, the hard work they've put in, and then to have Alex deliver and execute in really tough conditions, right? Alex did
Yeah.
a fabulous job. Carlos unfortunately had a moment, hit the wall on the first lap. The back of his car stepped out under throttle. He said it was a very unanticipated torque surge that he wasn't expecting, quite honestly, when he got under the throttle. It made me a little curious, Paul, of how each team's car manages throttle and torque. And I'm sure the Williams is quite different than the Ferrari.
Yeah.
But, you know, driving a road car, you know, our torque is what it is, you know. But in race cars like that, I'm very interested, and even in your Aston Martin, the GTD, or the Valkyrie for that matter, you know, is it a slow linear as you push on the throttle, or is it as soon as you go, it's whap, it's on?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, there you go.
So, so there's a lot of work goes on with those systems, and the conditions change. The program will change for how much throttle, how much power you're putting in for a degree of throttle. I talked about the brake migration last time.
Yep.
How it's infinitely adjustable, so that opens up a whole can of worms that you can go down a bad hole, or you can find a lot of performance. Same thing with the throttle control. You know, they're all fly-by-wire, so basically the computer's telling they can control how much power delivery comes in, where it comes in. Does it come in the high end, low end? Does the curve flatten? Do you have to reprogram it for the rain? And this kind of goes along with the other rookies that crashed.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they didn't have a lot of experience in the rain because they hadn't actually got to do that. But these are all new cars, and whenever you bring a new car in, you're also pushing the limits and trying to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the understanding and progress is made with programming and understanding how the throttle works, how the car can receive that power, where it should receive the power. And they don't have that book of work yet. And for them to debut during very slick, tight conditions, I am not surprised that Carlos found some kind of anomaly in the system that they'll go back and try and fix. But I'm sure he's not lying. It's not, none of these guys actually really did anything wrong from my side. They just got called out by the conditions. But they weren't literally doing anything wrong. And just that little power delivery, it must be something in the programming where they didn't adjust it properly for colder tires, wet track, because they don't know how the car's going to behave yet. And now they've learned a lesson, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's what James said. They have to go back and look at it and figure out from the data what happened there. And I don't think it's an excuse from Carlos. I'm sure the torque surge caught him, you know, off guard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's quite different than what he's used to in the Ferrari. So because each team, as you said, would adjust differently.
Right.
And because how much throttle and when the throttle comes in is dependent on all of those factors you said, plus the chassis itself and how the chassis reacts. And
right. So even if it's engine, you know, obviously there's a Mercedes, that's going to feel different even from the Mercedes car to the other cars that have the Mercedes engine.
Right,
so
right.
The teams go their own way on that respect.
Yeah, right. So I think that's it's an important factor. It's one of those learning lessons. But, you know, Carlos, made it back to the pits, crashed on the first. Now, oddly, also, Carlos, there was no tears or consoling of Anthony Hamilton or Stefano for Carlos either. Who knew? But he made it back to pits and was, part of the team. He's right there in the pit wall, helping with strategy. And it was great. It was great to see. And I love it that team. So great job, Mr. Valls. I'm very, very, very happy for you. let's talk about Aston Martin. Lance Stroll in P6, Alonso at DNF. A rare moment for Fernando, who was running P10 for much of the early part of the race. Then the rain came. He caught a curb, spun it, hit the wall. It's a rare mistake from a champ, but I think it goes to show it's pretty tricky conditions out there. And I was thinking he would hang on to a point or two there, but so a bit of a rare error from Fernando.
Yeah, it wasn't a spectacular drive from him altogether, really.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think Lance was ahead of him for the most part. Anyway.
I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So not great.
Not great.
But at least for Aston, they're not last either, as predicted by the press.
Yes, the press was thinking they were going to be last. They weren't, and in large part thanks to Lance. Lance benefited from attrition, like George did. Of course, he did, but you have to be there to capitalize, just like George was and Lance was. Right, he was there. You think, oh well, he inherited P6. Well, he was running thereabouts.
Pretty much,
and look good. It's races like these that I think Lance really does show his stuff in these changing conditions. I just think he's really pretty good in these conditions.
Yeah, it's historically it has been the case.
Yeah. I
don't know why.
Right.
But historically, changeable conditions are where he's really flourished.
He does. He tends to flourish in these kind of conditions. Something about his racecraft. He delivered 8 points to the team on the season opener. That's great.
Yep.
Lance said, for him during the race, it was really kind of a case of risk versus reward. And just in his mind, he just had to stay clean, stay consistent, and that was key for him. He wasn't driving at 10/10ths, and it was just about putting in that consistency, staying clean, staying out of trouble, and that delivered the points.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. Let's see. And another team everyone thought would be dead last is Kick Sauber. You had Gabriel Bortoleto at DNF, Nico Hulkenberg all the way up in P7. Gabriel was doing really well early on. Got a penalty for an unsafe release, which was very unfortunate. He was making up ground once he got on the intermediates, but then he hit some white paint like the other rookies and lost the car, ending his race. It was really weird because as he started to spin, the right rear tire suspension and everything broke.
Yeah.
Even before he hit the wall, right? And so that kind of caught me off guard. And I think Sky crew was looking at that, thinking, well, wait a minute, did that break first and put him in a spin? Or what happened there, Yeah.
Yeah, it did look weird.
It did. And I know Helmut Marko called Gabriel B driver, but I think, honestly, Paul, on the balance of the weekend, I thought he did a pretty good job overall on the weekend. I thought he looked pretty racy. He looked good. I don't think he's got anything to be ashamed of. And I thought there was a few moments there and some of the driving, I thought he looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, he's not coming in with a lot of fanfare for sure.
No.
But, he's raced against Bierman, against Kimi, Antonelli, Isaac.
Won the championship.
And won the championship. So, he's no slouch.
Right.
He's maybe in a B team as it is at the moment.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I would put him in a B driver category yet.
Right.
But anyway.
I don't think we have any on the grid this year.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Nico, great race for him, keeping his foot in it. Obviously, the wily veteran, kept calm the whole race. Didn't put really a foot wrong, looked planted. The team and Nico had the right strategy call for enters, and he took advantage of the attrition ahead of him, obviously. Brought it home in P7. That was more points scored on Sunday by Nico than the entire team scored in the 2024 season.
Yeah, he's got a habit of doing that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That is impressive stuff.
It is.
I thought this team was just going to be also-rans, but Nico Hulkenberg pulls it out again.
He did. He did.
Great job.
Yeah, it was a really good job. Let's see. Then we get down to Ferrari.
Must be the water. Let's add that to the words of wisdom.
Let's add that to the words of wisdom, Paul. That was such a great radio from Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc in P8, Lewis Hamilton in P10.
Ferrari radio was entertaining all race long. Really,
oh my gosh, it was. There was a moment where the whole Lewis radio to the team just got cringy. It was just cringy.
Yeah.
and that was not good. But let's start with Charles. Charles had a good start, nabbed a few spots early on. So I thought at that time, aha, see, Ferrari had leaned into the wet setup on Saturday, and now it's going to pay dividends. Boy, was I wrong. I was horribly wrong. Charles had a spin, and Ferrari chose to keep both drivers out when the rain came again, thinking it wouldn't last long. And that put their race to bed, basically, at that point, as they both sank back down the field when they had to box. Charles did overtake Lewis at the restart as a welcoming gift to Ferrari, and he dragged his car back up to P8. So, I don't know if there's anything point necessarily. I mean, he had a spin, but it was more strategy than it was show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't mind the strategy. Because you just, the weather is unpredictable.
They gambled.
And I don't think they really had much in hand to be able to fight tooth and nail everybody yesterday. So
well, and that may be why they chose to gamble.
Yeah, but you should still split the strategy.
Yeah.
Gamble with one, don't gamble with the other. You should always do that. Their full commitment, unless you're really, really confident about the weather. But if you're not, then you kind of put both cars to the back of the top 10, which is unfortunate. I
was a little surprised that when McLaren came in, they didn't split that. They put them both on hard compounds. They didn't split one hard, one medium.
Yeah, I think it's confidence in their car.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, pace in hand. But you're right.
Plus, playing into that is the whole. Well, who got the better strategy? Was the hard the right?
Right.
That's the thing. They, as you talked about, they're gonna have to play that card all year long to make sure no one thinks anyone's getting any bias.
Yeah, no. But you're right. Yeah. They should have split Lewis and Charles on that strategy. Yeah, I agree. Really, Lewis. Look, it was a ragged day. And it was a little chippy on the radio between him and his new engineer. I bet he's missing Bono about now.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate. I think Lewis is trying to be polite with his new team, but then it got sort of the point where he's frustrated. He's frustrated with how the race was turning out. He felt like they left him out. They missed a big opportunity for points. I think Lewis is getting a little frustrated by that. Much had been made about Lewis's weekend, but I think we need to give him some time here.
Mm-hmm.
Tough race. He had to try to learn the car on inters. He hadn't driven the car in wet, and everything's, there's a lot of different procedures, and it's going to take Lewis a little bit to get in the rhythm, folks. So don't be too hard on him on this.
Yeah.
I think, I saw somebody post, "Hey, here's all the other champions that went to Ferrari and the points they scored." Or the positions they had on their first with Ferrari, and Lewis is down at P10. I'm like, it's context is king. It's a pointless exercise. I don't think you can say, oh, he's down at P10 and Kimi, was in P1 when he on his debut with Ferrari. It's all context, folks. And I think you got to give Lewis a little room here and a little patience. It's going to take some time to get the rhythm, to understand the team, the communication that he prefers, the communication the team prefers from him. It's just going to take time. And to be honest with you, this is where you tell if this is a good move, if it actually can gel,
Yeah.
And if the two can work together and they can give him a car the way he likes it. This is all part and parcel, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a brand new world for him.
Yeah.
But notoriously, Lewis hasn't come out of the first 2 or 3 races, punching at 100%, even in the Mercedes days.
You're right.
So he kind of leans, eases into the season a little bit. It was easier with the Mercedes because then he'd just win 10 on the trot, but not going to do that. I do question whether this relationship with the engineer is going to last because I just don't see that progressing further. I mean, it feels like old Father Time, Italian style on the radio. And Lewis is, pretty dynamic. Yeah. Even though he's one of the older statesmen as a driver, he's a pretty young, dynamic guy and likes to be animated. And I think he feeds off the animated calls from Bono or whatever. I just don't it just didn't feel good at all.
No. Bono had to learn over time how to manage Lewis. When Lewis is really upset or he's really frustrated or he's over animated or the adrenaline's going 1,000 miles an hour and you got to calm him down. All of those moments Bono had learned to manage, right?
Yeah.
And the team now has to learn that. And to your point, Paul, I don't know if the current engineer is gonna be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I mean it's because it's dangerous if you have a engineer that's just going to go, oh, okay. They're scared to give a different opinion to Lewis than he's wanting.
Kind of like GP's done with Max,
Yeah,
he shut
right?
Max down a few times.
Yeah, and you need that.
Yeah.
Because if you're afraid, I'm sure he's an intelligent person that has good information, good ideas. But if you're afraid to speak them, then the progress is going to be slow.
Yeah.
And the success is going to be wanting.
Right. So he should have come back and said, "No, damn it,
Yeah.
Lewis! I said hit the K1 button. When I tell you hit the K1 button, you do it. You don't tell me you'll get to it."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's got to be interesting. And I always think about your series, Paul. Like the Valkyrie, right? You got your drivers, 3 drivers in there. You've had to learn how to work with Ross Gunn.
Yeah. Nightmare.
Nightmare. Ross is a pretty handy shoe, is he not?
Yeah, he's pretty handy.
Yeah, he's pretty handy around in that Valkyrie. I thought.
They're all good guys.
But you had to learn how. What is Ross like?
Sure.
What kind of details does he want? What does he not want? When is it good to talk to him? When is it not? The information you're getting back from him, okay, it's not enough, or we need different or more. Okay, Ross, you have to tell me these things.
Yes. Don't focus on this stuff. This isn't important. Let's focus on this. Yeah.
Right. This is what we need to know to get you to the checkered flag. So those kind of push and pull relationships, in F1 take time for sure. And I think in your series is even more difficult because you're multiple drivers, right?
Right.
And they have a tendency to rotate different teams, different styles. And it's got to be really difficult for Ian and you and the entire team to manage those things. But I think in Ferrari's case, it's going to take some time.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Let's see. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P11, Jack doing a DNF. I'm getting a little, I don't know, a little raw over the Jack doing bashing.
Yeah, love. No, well, not love, but lack of.
Yeah, lack of. I'm getting a little raw on it. I thought Jack had a really good weekend going.
Yeah.
He hit the wall first lap. So did Carlos Sainz. He's in good company. All right, it happens, and I get it. But his qualifying, he got caught out by the yellow flags, or he made it through. I think Jack had a really good performance. And you think about what we talked about last week. We were talking about, it's hard to go in there with everybody saying, well, it's just a matter of time until Colapinto gets in.
Yeah.
And even the Australian press were asking, they're grilling him, hey, how's it feel that no Colapinto is ready to take over your seat? And it's like, guys, come on. He's not even turned a wheel yet, and you're already, dancing about on his grave. Stop it. Give the guy a chance. His performance on Friday and Saturday I thought was impressive. He was there or thereabouts with Pierre. What did we say last week? I said last week, you didn't correct me, so I think you agree. But what Jack needs to focus on this year is being there or thereabouts with Pierre. They're not going to replace Pierre with Colapinto.
Right.
And if Jack is right there or thereabouts with Pierre, then they have no reason to change him either.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So as long as you're there, and he was earlier in the weekend, he was on pace. He was right there with Pierre.
Yeah, I think he was ahead of him in a couple of sessions.
Yeah. So, everybody just back the heck off. Give him some breathing room. Let him get his sea legs. Let him see how the season develops here. You know?
And the team, it's to their benefit.
It is.
Give him some room.
Yeah.
You don't know the talent he has. If you don't give him a chance, you may be losing a great talent.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But they don't know
Let's find
either.
out.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Shouldn't we have some patience and find out?
Yep.
If he puts it in the wall every race and you're in 4 or 5 races in the season, okay, maybe you need to make a change. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just hate it that he walks into the season under that cloud. I thought he handled himself really well with all those questions. And he said, well, we don't just have Franco. There's 4 reserve drivers, and they all want my position. They want Pierre's seat, too. And I was there last year wanting this seat, so I get it.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, well done, Jack. Hang in there. I thought you could. Pierre, it was unfortunate because Pierre had to stay out on slicks. They tried to stay out on slicks, kind of replicate that Brazil magic that he did last year, right? It didn't work. So he had to box again. And when he came out in 8th, then you had the 2 Ferraris coming through the field, and then you had Oscar recovering. That dropped him down to P11. It's not the worst day for Pierre, just a strategy that didn't quite work out. I think maybe had they not done that strategy, he probably would have been higher up, maybe in that P6, P7, P8. But anyway, not a terrible day in the office for Pierre. Just strategy didn't work.
Yeah, certainly nothing bad that Pierre was doing. The strategy still worth a go for them.
Yep.
Early in the season.
Yep.
Don't see any harm in it really. And it could. It said you just don't know with the weather. They can come out being geniuses, but it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, it didn't. Let's see. Racing Bulls. Isaac Hajar, a DNF. Yuki Tsunoda, P12. Isaac hit the wall in the formation lap. That's happened to drivers before. Isaac.
He was going so slow.
He was. He just
it was insane.
Blipped the throttle and just whipped around. It was that quick. But a very emotional outburst that saw Anthony Hamilton and Stefano Domenicali and the entire F1 press corps. They're all just rushing
hugging
to him. Oh no, young man, it's fine. The amount of empathy was off the charts for that. I'm really not sure why. I said in my race review at the website, he's going to need a hell of a lot thicker skin than that if he wants to stay in F1. And I knew it wouldn't go over well with Helmut, and it didn't. Helmut said the whole emotional thing was rather embarrassing.
Yeah, there is no emotions in Red Bull.
No. And everybody's, but these young drivers are under a lot of pressure at Red Bull, and it's a revolving door over there, and he knows the pressure. Well, I know, but so does Yuki. Yuki knows it. Liam knows it. Everybody that's been in that team knows it. I mean, I feel terrible for him on a formation lap, but he's not the first driver that's put it in the wall on a formation lap on tricky conditions.
I don't fault any of them on that.
No.
All those early, it was just, you can't buy experience.
No, it takes
in those conditions.
You had Carlos Sainz in the wall. You had Fernando Alonso in the wall. Come on.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, my gosh. So anyway, he's got to get some thick skin or he's going to get eaten alive in F1. So talking about Yuki though, tough day for Yuki, running in P6 for much of the race, looked really good. It chose not to come in for inters. That spoiled his race, dropped him down to P11. I will say, given Isaac's pace on Saturday and Friday and Yuki's on Sunday, I'm kind of curious if they're in a little more in this car than what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did see it. I think in the race we didn't see it as a result, but for sure through the whole weekend, it was pretty damn fast. Wasn't expecting that either. For a rookie to be up in the top 10 or whatever it was during sessions and stuff like that. So, as I said, we've got a couple more races before we start making big decisions on who's where. But definitely was a pretty powerful position. Certainly when you see those guys up over and above Lawson, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure Lawson didn't like to see that very much.
I'm sure he didn't. And and I'm sure Yuki's got a lot to prove. Yeah. And drove incredibly well. I thought the whole weekend. And Isaac looked terrific, too, on Friday and Saturday. I thought he was doing a yeoman's job. So good on them. I hope that continues. That could be a kind of fun battle there midfield.
Yeah.
That'd be good. And then sadly, yeah, got Haas F1 dead last. Esteban Ocon P13, Ollie Behrman in P14. Ollie started from the pit lane after having that really ragged Friday and Saturday. He had that crash in FP1 and FP3, and then had the mechanical, and just a tough weekend for him. But he did manage to finish the race in very difficult conditions. It's what he didn't do, if you remember back in Brazil. Was it Brazil in the rain where he spun off, and Io was kind of like, you can't do that. Yeah, you got to bring it home. So anyway, he did bring it home. Esteban felt that, bottom line is he just felt we just didn't have the performance. And had we had the performance, we'd have gotten to the points. I think everybody could say that, Esteban. Fair enough. But the strategy also had both cars at the back. They tried to stay out on inters when everybody was boxing for slicks, thinking that maybe the rain would come a little sooner than it did. It didn't, so they had to box for slicks. Then that cost them too much time, and that put them in the back. And Sky was making a lot on the fact that they never ran low fuel runs in testing, or really in free practice. And they kept insinuating that Ollie's problems, and maybe they never did low fuel quality runs in testing or on Friday, and so the drivers didn't know how the cars would react on low fuel, low weight.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any merit to that, but
there is merit to that. I mean, that is a thing.
It is a thing. A lighter car changes. Yeah,
direction. I mean, it could go bad, or it could go better, or you have to make the adjustments. You always have a little bit of a different adjustment that
change your braking points.
Yeah, and you can attack the corners more. The car will handle a little bit different. Things you can get away with for 3 laps do not pan out for 30 laps.
You rotate the car a little better.
Yeah, I mean, you could just set it up, make it on a knife edge, because you can last like that in a qualifying lap, but you can't. Yeah. As I said, it then puts a lot of deg on the tire sometimes, and so you got to make the car last for a stint. In Grand Prix racing, it's a whole race, right? But a stint on the tire, at least. And in qualifying, you don't have to take any of that in consideration, so you can set the car up a little bit differently.
Right. Ollie said basically the race for them was about getting laps and collecting data, and they did manage to do that. And I think I said that really with the amount of data that was really going to help them, that's what they were focused on during the race, is just really getting both cars to the end, collecting as much data as they can to figure out what they've got to focus on to improve the car. Yeah. So that's what they did. All right. Well, that is the end of our team review, but we always hand out some awards because that's what we like to do. The first one is Move of the Race.
We'll do it live.
Yes. Move of the race, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Max at the beginning.
Yep.
He wasn't in the quickest car, but he sure showed Piastri how to run a rain line. And I know everyone's like, oh, well, Max just has this great idea. It's like, well, it's a pretty common idea, but he just tends to be able to execute it really, really well. So
yeah, if you looked at both of those McLarens, they were on the racing line, and the back ends are all getting squirrely. And he went out wide, found all the grip, went right around Oscar.
Yeah, which is I know to do that, right? If I'm right, I don't know why it's. I mean, the Grand Prix cars seem to be able to stay online in the rain more than I would be able to in what I've raced, but because downforce helps. There's still more grip out there in the rain. It always will be.
Yeah, it was a great move. My move of the race, I had Oscar on the outside of Lewis on the last lap. That was pretty gutsy. I thought it was a good move. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. So, well done, Oscar. I know I was just talking trash about you, but I do think you're awesome. All right, next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
Seriously, Todd.
Yes, seriously. All right, Paul, Donkey of the Race.
Yeah, I guess we could have given it to the rookies, but I'm going to give them some deference because I really do think it was the conditions, and they weren't really doing anything wrong. They were just caught out by conditions they'd never come up to. So I'm going to give it to Ferrari for throwing their cars further down the placings. Don't mind them having to go with one, but not splitting the strategy, I think, was a big mistake.
Well, that's funny because my donkey of the race was Ferrari strategy too. Team is better than that. That was teetering on embarrassing, so that was not good.
I just wonder
Not
if,
good.
kind of like we talk about the balance between the drivers for McLaren, if Ferrari with Lewis now on the team, they didn't want to split the strategy because they didn't want to give someone an advantage and then have to get the wrath of either Charles or Lewis for not giving them the proper strategy.
In Lewis's case, Ferrari's going to find out pretty quickly. If there is even a slightest hint of favoring Charles or impropriety, Team LH will absolutely devour that team. They're like, it's just crazy. They just go insane, and on social media. So they'll find out. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. That was Donkey. All right, well, then the final award of the podcast is always Drive of the Race.
Get in there, Lewis.
Get down. Get down.
Oh, boy. Drive of the Race.
All right, I'm going to give it to Toto's favorite little new puppy. I'm going to give it to Kimi.
Get down.
Yes.
I mean, I think he made a big mistake, a rookie mistake, and he got away with it. But everything else, the performance and getting it to fourth was pretty stout and definitely a great view of what this kid's going to be capable of in the future.
Yeah, I was torn. I had Lando, Kimi, or Alex. I could give it to any one of them. You chose Kimi. I just think Lando did a fantastic job all weekend, and I think Alex did too. Alex just had a fantastic. I'll give it to Lando because so much is on the line, and I think even he ran off track, and Oscar went off track, and he went off same place. He managed to keep it on, dove in the pits, got the tire chase, boom, kept his head. I just thought it was a really heads-up race, so I'll give it
absolutely. Yeah, the pressure is just going to get bigger.
It's going to get more. Yep. And I think Lando, he doesn't feel like he thinks those low grip tracks like Las Vegas, they're really going to struggle at given their car. So it'll be interesting to see if they have this, as you said at the top of this podcast, do they really have 3/10 on the entire field at every track? We'll see. Australia is a little bit of an outlier, like you said. It's a street course. It's in a park. It's crowned. There's white paint on it. It'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that does it. But we don't have to wait very long, Paul.
No, we don't.
We have China coming up.
We do.
We have China coming up this weekend. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Hopefully there's the better weather.
I hope so. Then we can see him.
Not always happens in China, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. Do you like that first turn, that decreasing radius turn?
I hate it.
I hate it too.
I hate it. If I was driving that track, and I've done it obviously on the sim and stuff, it's just the worst corner ever.
Yeah, I hate that corner.
Yeah.
And they always big it up, but I'm kind of like, that's a crap corner.
It
really is.
It really is painful.
It is painful. All right. Well, let us know what you think about the Australian Grand Prix. We certainly enjoyed it. And again, Paul, congrats on the podium finish at the 12 Hours of Sebring. And you guys are at Mugello, right? At the 12 Hours this weekend?
Yeah, it never stops. Yeah, I'm not there, but the team's racing in the Graventic 12-hour. So we got
Hannah, Gray, and Ian?
Yep. So Hannah Gray and Ian, so it's their turn this week.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
Ian had a weekend off.
That's right.
He needs to get back in the seat.
Yeah, he had 12 hours of Sebring. He just was at pit wall yelling at the drivers.
Yeah. So it'll be good. It's going to be good. Yeah, Hannah's going to get her second GT3 race under her belt. Great. So I'm excited to see what she does.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. All right, well, let us know what you think about this race. And if you like the podcast, go to your favorite podcast player. Give us some love over there. Appreciate it. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. If you like to watch the podcast, you can do that at our YouTube channel, The Park for May, and you can watch these podcasts. Give us a subscribe, hit follow, hit the bell. Doesn't cost you anything, and It's easy to do. And spread the word. We could use the brand building from our listeners, so we'd appreciate it. And Paul, we will be back next weekend to talk about the Chinese Grand Prix. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.